Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 159 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 15 of A Storm of Swords, that's Jon 2.
As always, we're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter, which would be particularly helpful if you're not reading along.
Indeed.
How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing just fine, getting ready for the storm.
Oh yes, we're about to get hit by Hurricane Ian, right?
Yes, so...
Do you remember the episode where you couldn't remember what a tropical storm was?
I do remember that.
I still laugh about that.
I think it made it into one of the outtake episodes. So
it was,
if anyone's curious, try one of our outtake episodes and you might hear me really struggling with that word. But it was good to see you at lunch yesterday.
Oh yeah, just briefly, right? I was off to play soccer, sorry.
Yeah, you sat down. I was finishing telling Joan about the bumper car, my cars being treated like bumper cars story, yeah. And you sat next to me. I look over and you were gone. I was like, where did he? And I never found you again. And guess you went to play soccer. So
because of my vacation, my soccer team was bottom of the league, 2 defeats from 2 games, but we won yesterday.
Of course. Now that you're back at the helm,
the spiritual leader is back, and all things are right with the world. So we've had a big conference at work this week, and we had some special guests, some sort of fairly famous people. You didn't see the guy Oz Perlman, the mentalist guy?
I did not. I saw Blossom.
Oh, is that who she is?
I can never... The Malum Blalik or something like that. Mayim Blalik, something. The new host of Jeopardy.
Yes, don't look at me. Yes.
She was the host of the session that I was watching.
Well, this mentalist guy was... He Let me summarize this for you, Mackelly. I now believe in magic. He was absolutely extraordinary. The tricks he was pulling, it just blew my mind. I'll give you an example of one of the tricks he played, right? He got a guy to get a deck of cards, okay?
Yep.
He told the guy to go off camera. It's all done by, sort of Zoom call kind of thing. The guy went off camera and the guy told him, put your favourite card in your pocket and come back with the rest of them. Okay? So he did, came back. Okay. And then he said, all right, flicker the cards in front of the camera so I can watch. And he flickered the cards and he went, 3 of diamonds. And the guy pulled the 3 of diamonds out of his pocket. And I'm just like, How did you do that? There's no way the flicker was any way, there's no way you could see all 51 cards in the flicker. It just wasn't possible.
Right.
And that was just typical. I mean, he did like 20 of these tricks, and they were all more gobsmacking than the last one.
Wow. I missed it too.
I actually brought Lucas in, and he was watching over my shoulder, and he was like, well, he must know the lady. He must know in advance. And I was like, I work with that lady. He doesn't know her. It's just
amazing
absolutely
what
amazing.
They can do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really was. I've seen a YouTube video of it, and he said that there's 2 facets to what he does. One is he reads people. He reads people's tells. And the second one is the power of suggestion, that he actually tells you what to do and you subconsciously do it.
Wow, so that's a powerful trick right there.
The 3 of diamonds trick was obviously he told the guy to put the 3 of diamonds in his pocket, but nobody heard him say that, but the guy did,
Wow. That would be very useful in life.
It would. If he becomes the next president, I'm going to be very concerned.
Well, so our car saga continues here.
Uh-oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, so we bought Stacy a new car yesterday.
Oh.
No, it was a used car, new to us. Well, I wouldn't buy a new car if
I've met you, Mackelly.
And it's nice and shiny and new, pretty new. But you know what it means, which is there's a dark shadow behind this, is that it's a larger SUV too as well. So I I have no justification for keeping my van any longer.
Oh, no.
And we now have
Oh, no.
4 cars and 3 drivers in the house, so we don't even have enough space in the garage and driveway to park 4 cars, so Molly has to park up on the road. So, the reality, as we were going through the paperwork and stuff to buy this car, I was like, the reality of what comes next was painful. So I'm going to, of course, drag my feet as long as possible. But I have to do it at some point. I know I have to. So,
Mackelly, would it help if I told you that minivans go and live on a farm in upstate?
If I knew it would be well taken care of, I would feel a lot better. This is a sigil of my house we're talking about.
That's right.
I love my van. Old and beleaguered as she is.
Your new sigil will just be a blank. Just nothing.
Like the Night's Watch. You had teased last episode that there were wedding stories that you wanted to tell all of us. Is there anything you want to tell us, or you gotta wait still?
I think I'm still jet lagged, right? So I this is actually an interesting story about jet lag. So I used to travel a lot on business, and I adamantly told Carson, I said, there is no such thing as jet lag. Jet lag is just a myth. Like, if you fly from west to east, you fly, across the Atlantic, you fly overnight, it's utterly exhausting. You power through the next day, and then you go to sleep and your clock has reset. Yeah?
Okay.
And when you come back, it's just a very long day, and you try and stay up as late as possible. You go to bed, you're tired, you sleep 12 hours, you're reset.
Okay. I theoretically get your logic there.
Yeah. Carson disagreed with me, and ever since we had that discussion, I won't call it an argument, because it was just a difference of opinion. She thinks it exists, and I don't think it exists.
Right.
I have been cursed with jet lag.
You opened your mouth. You had to go and say something.
I know. So, before I went to Europe, I would wake up at like 7 o'clock. Get up, kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Now, I wake up at 5 o'clock like I'm in a toothpaste commercial. Bing! Good morning! It's absolutely incredible. And I mean, I can't, it's not even that I can't get back to sleep. I can't even put my head back down on the pillow to try. I'm just like, come on, face the day. Let's go.
Are you the only one in the house facing this?
I'm certainly the only one at 5 o'clock. Although I've heard Lucas pottering around in the small hours as well, so he's definitely suffering as well.
Okay.
But the upshot of all that is I have not yet processed all the stories from.
All right.
There's plenty, and I'll drib and drab them out over the years. But the big one, which I have now told you offline, that one's going to have to wait for some water to pass under the bridge, because it's a doozy. But
I can attest. I've heard the story. It is a doozy.
Podcast ever get translated into French, it could cause a diplomatic incident. So we got to one day.
Okay.
Actually, I tell you what. I'll tell it to the sustainers next time we have.
Oh, yes, good idea.
There you go.
Yes.
They can hear it.
It's a good one.
You know what?
Definitely
that will convince Rob to become a sustainer, so he can hear and correct, deny everything.
We need to get Rob as a sustainer. He'll be very entertaining on that call.
Yeah, we could invite him anyway, because he'd be entertaining all by himself. But I don't know if I said it. We had a wonderful time, and it was so great to see my family, and we just had a great
was.
Time. And Rob's new bride, Sophie, is just lovely, and her family were terrific, and it was just wonderful time.
All good things.
But anyway, let's get down to business.
Yes, let's do.
How do we leave Jon Snow? Well, last we saw of Jon, he was taken to the main wildling camp after killing Quarren Harfan to prove that he'd deserted the Night's Watch. He was brought to the tent of Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, and his court of wildling dignitaries. I think, actually, the air quote should have been around dignitaries there.
Either one. Probably both.
After initially mistaking Mance for another, he explained that he and 4 other black brothers were caught while searching for the wildling army. He was shocked to learn that Mance was at Winterfell when King Robert was there. When asked why he deserted the Night's Watch, Jon told of how Mance saw his treatment as a bastard of Winterfell, and not much had changed since. Accepting that answer, Mance wanted him to find a new cloak, non-black. Visit Simon and Mackelly's haberdashery.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
10% off sale for all wildlings.
Yes. 5% off all treacherous brothers of the Night's Watch.
Right. All right, so Jon sits on horseback alongside Tormund Giantsbane, watching the procession go by. Giants. Hundreds of them ride past him on the backs of woolly mammoths. They're not like the descriptions of huge men that old Nan described in her stories. These beings are more bear-like than human, 10 to 14 feet tall with shaggy pelts covering much of their bodies. Jon is reminded of the fable about Jormungand blowing the horn of winter and waking the giants from the earth.
When the oldest looking of the giants rides past, Tormund shares a joke with him in the old tongue. Jon asks Tormund if that's their king. Tormund says they have no king. But that is Magmartun do Weg, or Mag the Mighty if you prefer. With that, the pair head back toward the front of the column. Jon wears the new cloak Mance Rayder gave him, but secretly keeps his black cloak of the Night's Watch hidden under his saddle.
Keen to gather information as per Qhorin Halfhand's command, Jon asks Tormund how he got his many and varied titles. He starts with Tormund's surname, Giantsbane, but is really most interested in Hornblower, wondering if it was the Horn of Winter this host found in the Frostfangs. Tormund's answers are comical and absurd, but he never explains the Hornblower moniker.
Tormund thinks the Night's Watch must have made Jon a eunuch, since he always rejects Ygritte's clear advances. Jon had been well aware of Ygritte's desire. She has left Rattleshirt's band to join Tormund's to be nearer to Jon. She always puts her sleeping furs next to his, no matter where he goes. He's taken to using Ghost as a buffer between the two. Jon says he's never touched her. She's too young to wed, but that's not to say Jon hasn't thought about being with Yigrette. Although not attractive in the traditional Seven Kingdoms sense, there's much about her he fancies.
The reality is Jon can't bear the thought of fathering a bastard like himself. Tormund can't fathom why. They're no less smart, strong, or healthy than anyone else. Jon sees no wonder in why the Seven Kingdoms see wildlings as hardly human. They have no laws, honor, or simple decency. They steal from each other, breed like beasts, and prefer rape over marriage. All that said, he's growing fond of some, like Tormund, Longspear Rick, and Yigrette, despite his best efforts with Yigrette. There are other wildlings that he feels less warm and fuzzy about. Beyond Rattleshirt, Steer, and Harma Dogshead, there are bands and individuals Jon finds unsettling and bizarre.
Despite Jon's integration into this huge host, he's had little luck fulfilling the mission that Qhorin Halfhand tasked him with. He's hardly seen Mance except at a distance, and if they found anything noteworthy in the Frostfang, nobody's saying a word about it around him. But he's determined to keep this host north of the Wall. Bran, Rickon, and everyone he's ever known are safe in Winterfell, and he plans to keep it that way.
The host nears the Fist of the First Men, and Jon expects his Night's Watch brothers to ride down on them any time now. Jon figures there's no way that 300 Night's Watch can defeat this huge host, but they won't need to. Take out Mance, and it all falls apart. Besides, most of the useful fighters are spread thinly throughout the host.
At the conclusion of a rousing rendition of The Last of the Giants, led by Yigrette, an eagle attacks Jon's face. Yigrette and Tormund come to Jon's defence, and Tormund calls for Rattleshirt to call the beast off. It's the eagle who's followed Jon everywhere. Jon killed its warg, Orell, when he took Yigrette hostage, but some of the man's consciousness seems to have transferred into the bird. Rattleshirt reports that he's here to bring Jon to Mance. Jon goes with him, and Yigrette accompanies them.
The trio make their way to the top of the Fist of the First Men. Along the way, Jon sees dead horses everywhere, and inside the ring wall, the snow is pink with blood, yet no bodies aside from the horses. An irate Mance waits inside a tent, surrounded by his top lieutenants. He demands Jon tell him how many there were, and he better tell the truth this time. Jon struggles with juggling playing turncloak versus actually being one. Ultimately, he tells the truth. 300.
Mance asks who led, taking several guesses, all wrong. Again, Jon's tormented by how to respond, but he reveals that it was the old bear himself. The news is met with incredulity. Mance thinks if it is true they've won the war. Bowen Marsh is in charge of Castle Black and he's no warrior. Mance also reveals that the Night's Watch might have helped his host more than they could have realised. Mance had been wondering why they had suffered no attacks from whites. Now it makes sense. The Night's Watch's presence was a welcome distraction for the undead army.
Now what to do with Jon? Jon insists he's loyal to Mance. He wears the cloak Mance gave him. Yigrette adds that there's many a night the two of them dance beneath it, too. This lifts all eyebrows in attendance. Jon has no choice but to play along. Mance decides it's time Jon proves his faith. He's sending Jon and Yigrette over the wall with Styr and Jarl. If Jon proves himself false, cut out his heart.
With that, Mance and co leave. The emergence of ghosts sends an angry Rattleshirt packing. Alone, Jon tells Yigrette she didn't need to lie for him. She said she didn't. She just left out the when of their romance. That begins tonight. He'll need to find another place for Ghost to sleep. I will say, Mackelly, because I've been so out of it, you've done most of the work for this one, and you've done a very good job. Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
But it's a long chapter with very little happening.
It is.
There's a lot of description of this wildling host, and it's interesting, but it's hard to. There's not a lot of narrative impulse to the whole thing.
Yes. For the length of the chapter, it is surprisingly shallow on kind of driving the plot. Basically, the primary things we get out of it is they have a decent amount of giants. Tormund Giantsbane is usually full of crap.
Yep. But his crap is entertaining.
It is. As we see when I get to pedantry, I have one more bit to call him out on. But yeah, and that the great ranging that was on the Fist of the First Men is no longer there, and there's a lot of signs that a good many of them have not survived it.
Yeah, and the whole plan to sort of harry and attack the this wildling army from the sides, that's gone with it, of course. But I think you made a point to me that with hundreds of giants riding on mammoths, that's how they should have flanked this army.
Yeah.
You put those down the sides, no one's getting in, you know.
So Jon's the chapter opens with Jon counting the giants who were on the backs of woolly mammoths, might I add. And he stops at 50 because he gets distracted by Tormund, but he said they just keep coming. So you have to imagine there might be as many as 300 giants, 100, possibly, you know. His thing about the Night's Watch, the Great Ranging, riding down on them as 300. He's like, yeah, they'll slice through this host like, a hot knife through butter. But they have the same amount of mounted giants
for every one of those, there's a giant riding a mammoth with a club in his hand, which is like 8 feet long. And that person, in a one-to-one battle, has to take on Dolorous Ed.
Sam Tarley. Chet.
Yeah, Chet. Whose dogs are dragging him in the opposite direction, presumably.
Yeah.
I think this army could have been safe. Maybe Mance knew that they'd already been dispatched, and just didn't see the need to protect them.
Yeah, and, I can forgive Jon from his last chapter looking at the host as he just comes into the camp and then meets with Mance because he hadn't seen the giants. But he counts the giants, sees how many there are, and then still later in this chapter thinks, the Night's Watch Rangers are going to ride right through these guys. And He does admit they're not going to be able to take out the whole host. They're outnumbered, 100 to 1 or whatever number he gives. But he does know that they have, at that point, he does know that they have a significant amount of mounted giants.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So, in your mind, Mackelly, how many people are in this host?
I was thinking 30-ish to
30,000.
Yeah, 30,000, something like that.
Do you wonder how fast this host can move? Have you ever watched the beginning of a big marathon, like Boston or London?
They all, it looks like one blob moving for a while.
But except it doesn't, because the first row gets going,
right,
and the last row has to wait an hour before it even gets going. I mean, that's why your time is not the time from the start; it's from when you get across the start line. So imagine this host is that kind of crowd, but carrying all their stuff, right? And the front of the host has to stop early enough in the evening that the back of the host comes to a halt before sunset.
Yeah, right.
They're going to be doing like 2 miles a day. It's going to be pathetic.
Yeah. He mentioned that most of the host had, I forget what the term he used was, like dripped out of the frostfangs by now. It wasn't the word dripped, but it was like, the word made me think of like maple syrup or honey or something that moves really slowly. I can't remember exactly what his term was, but yes. And I think it took them hours to ride to the front of the host from back where they were with the giants at the beginning of the chapter.
I think it might be even bigger. I think it might be 50,000. Is how I feel about it.
Could be.
So Jon watches the procession of giants, and then he wonders if the legend of Joramun's horn really did wake them up. Do you know anything about this, Mackelly?
So, I mean, just like the bits of pieces of information that we've picked up at this point, remember back when Osha was talking to Bran in the Godswood, and she mentioned that Hodor had some giant's blood in him, and that her brother had killed a small giant? That didn't seem like that had happened like yesterday. No. You know, like, so it doesn't seem like if they were up in the Frostfangs looking for this Horn of Winter, that they found it, blew it, and all the giants just woke up.
Is Joramun's horn the same horn that we think they were looking for? Is this one and the same?
It's possible. I mean, it's the Horn of Winter that woke the giants is really what we know at this point.
Okay, so we believe these to be... There aren't two horns really being bandied around here. It's one horn.
That would be my assessment of it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I saw this as historical legend. You know, that the legend was that the horn woke the giants. They've been milling around ever since. But of course, it may now call the giants, of course. You know, so maybe they did find it, blew it, and the giants came.
And we have had a horn be found. Ghost took Jon to that buried cache of obsidian, and there was an old war horn in that cache as well. He gave it to Sam. Possible it could be the horn in question. It seemed like an old, battered, worn-out horn to Jon. So, you know, if it was hidden, it certainly wasn't used to wake these giants, unless whoever it was blew it and then ran and hid it somewhere. But, I mean, that could be a totally separate horn than the horn they're looking for. Yeah. He didn't, at least Jon didn't think anything looked special about it.
So the reason that this is sort of like maybe topical is because Tormund has the title Hornblower, and Jon wants to try and get to the bottom of that to see if it is something that has... Is that a name he's been carrying around for years, or is that a name he's been carrying around for a week and a half? You know?
Right, yes.
So if it is recent, then it might be something they found in the Frostfangs. But then when he blew it, what happened? Did anything happen?
Yeah. And of course, seeing all those giants riding on woolly mammoths would cause you to believe in a lot of things being possible.
Seeing that 3 of diamonds coming out of that guy's pocket made me believe in things. I believe in giants and mammoths.
Now you're looking for the Horde of Winter. But Corn did say he thought they were in the Frostfangs, they being the wildlings, were in the Frostfangs to find something special to break the wall. So it's possible this horn could also do something like that.
Right. So despite Jon's efforts, we don't really get any explanation of why Tormund is called the Hornblower, but we do get to the root of Giantsbane and the husband to bears title. So Giantsbane was in the cold winter, his horse died, and he found a sleeping giantess, cut her belly open, and climbed inside her a la Han Solo.
I think that was Luke.
Oh, It was Luke, and Han found him there. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yes, right.
He crawled in for warmth, but it didn't kill the giant. So the name is wrong because he wasn't the bane of this giant. She actually found the small person inside her belly and assumed it was her child and suckled him for 3 months thereafter.
Well, what gripe do you have about that story? I mean, you could pull a 3 of diamonds out of a deck of cards. You could hide in a giant's belly till spring. Now, of course, we know here spring might be, the only 3 months off or so. But he could have been in there for years. He could have been.
He also said that even to this day he misses the taste of giant's milk. So there's just elements of it that just ring true to me. I'm gonna say it's true.
I was going to say you're going to go true on that one. And then his husbands to bear title came about on an even colder winter night. This was a different winter, colder than the previous winter, where he was sitting in his hall, ruddy hall, drinking, and thinking about this woman that lived nearby, and ultimately decided he was going to go track her down. He coerced this woman out of her heavy furs that she was wearing and into sex, and then the next morning found a bear pelt on the floor of his room, and then other people were talking about a bear running around with the oddest cubs, oddest looking cubs, and he really misses that bear.
Yes, he said he missed her terribly. Yes, so
yeah.
Yes, he's quite.
So that's Tormund.
He's quite the storyteller, Tormund.
Yes, he is.
So Jon, particularly after Tormund sort of encourages him to sleep with Yigrette, he and particularly about the discussion about Jon not wanting to sire a bastard, he thinks that the Southerners barely think of wildlings as human. They have no laws, no honour, no decency. They steal from each other. They breed like beasts. They prefer rape to marriage. All of that to me is, if I were him, I would be having a sort of second thought of, it is weird how we in the South are hamstrung by these conventions, because most of these things aren't really, I mean, all right, the rape, preferring rape to marriage, yes, I think we can all sort of cross that one out as that's not good. But the rest of it is just social convention that's different north of the wall than south of the wall. And in actual fact, he might want to open his mind a little bit. It would be a much better society if, particularly for Jon Snow, if bastards were treated as equals.
Sure. Yeah.
Weren't treated as outsiders. And that's what goes on north of the wall.
Right. He'd be second in line to either the Lord of Winterfell or the King of the North, depending on... he might not have ended up here in the Night's Watch. So this Yigrette thing, it's another one of the spy duties that he's really struggling with, breaking his Night's Watch vow to be with Yigrette, which he does. He's really torn about Yigrette. On one hand, he does quite fancy her. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to. He's afraid of becoming too far separated from what makes him a brother of the Night's Watch. But
again, another Star Wars reference in the Star Wars version of this, little ghostly Obi-Wan Kenobi Quarren Halfhand would be slapping his forehead like, "Just do it, idiot."
I told you, don't balk at anything.
Right.
Whatever it takes.
And
that would be a cool character.
Yeah.
The ghost Lord Half-Hand. Would he get his other half of his hand back, though? That's what I want to know.
Well, yeah, that's right. Anakin was rebuilt, wasn't he? When he came back as a ghost. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Corrin full hand.
Corrin both hands. But I think it goes deeper than just him struggling with breaking this Night's Watch vow because of his hatred of the idea of fathering a bastard. Remember way back in Jon 1 of A Game of Thrones, he stormed out of the royal feast with Robert and his family because his uncle Benjen suggested that he father a few bastards of his own before joining the Night's Watch. So, but like you said, Tormund's take on bastards must have been a unique perspective for Jon. And, that Tormund says they're not any weaker. They're not more sickly. They're not more likely to fail. And, like you said, if he could wrap his mind around this concept, it might help him feel a lot better about himself as a person.
And also, he's very practical about it. It's like, Yigrette will only have a baby if she wants to. She knows, she's not expecting him to marry her, and if she gets pregnant, she can choose what to do. And there was clearly no judgment or societal pressure for her to do whatever, to do anything but what she wanted.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, he said if she doesn't want a baby, she'll go to a woods witch and drink some moon tea. It's real. I think he said, once your job is done, you no longer have any input.
Right. Yeah, he literally says that, yes. Yes.
But it reminded me a little bit, this whole thing, because he says, I'm too young to get... He's trying to think of a reason to give Tormund that he will believe. And so he says, I'm too young to get married. And this whole thing kind of reminded me a little bit of Robb last chapter, marrying Jane Westerling after one night together, believing it was the only honorable thing to do. It could be a Winterfell, especially a Winterfell thing that, this is really hammered into them that you don't do that kind of thing.
Plus, it just goes to the immaturity of both Robb and Jon, that they just don't really know how to behave in this situation, And what the way they behave is basically the rigid honor of Ned Stark. That's the sort of the one that their compass says that. But here they just have to be more practical, both of them. So Tormund concludes, Tormund really can't understand Jon here because there's a woman who's attracted to Jon and is throwing herself at him, and Jon keeps refusing, and Jon is a lapsed crow, not a current one. So Jon, I think he genuinely asks, do they make you a eunuch when you take your vows? Because what other reason could there be for saying no? He's absolutely flabbergasted by it. And none of Jon's excuses make any sense to him, sort of like the too young to get married. She's not asking you to get married. I don't want to sire a bastard. It wouldn't be yours anyway,
Yes, right. Yeah, but it's been really... And it's not like it's unclear whether Yigrette is interested in Jon. She's doing everything in her power to show him she's interested in him.
She spoons with him every night. It reminds me of the scene in The Man with Two Brains when he asks his dead wife for a sign, any sign, and the shrine spins and the wind howls and a voice says no, but he wants to do it anyway. Any sign.
But we had conjectured last Jon chapter that based on the fact that Jon got an initial meeting with the top brass of this here host, that Jon might immediately be given a place of importance in the army, but turns out it doesn't seem to be the case. He seems to be stuck pretty much hanging out with middle management.
Yeah.
And he's not able to do... he's watching, like Corrin wanted him to do, but he's not watching much. There's not much to watch at with the people he's associating with.
It also goes... again, this goes to the fundamental lack of point of all this. That they would like to get... Well, we don't know what they want, really. but they're just individuals. They're not going to be able to bring down the wall unless they've got this magical device to bring down the wall. And that's maybe why he's being kept from the top table, because they have found it, and the last thing they want is for him to find out. That being said, it is a bit of a mystery how you would gather 50,000 people together to help find a magical device, find the magical device, and then keep it from those 50,000 people so none of them know.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, you got this large, diverse group of tens of thousands of people, yet nobody is talking about what they found. But maybe most of the people were up there with no clue why they were up there. Maybe they just thought it was the meeting place.
But that doesn't feel like a very wildling thing to do. I mean, even to the wildlings, that must have seemed cold and inhospitable. Wait. Winter's coming and you want to climb up into the Frostfangs to have a
gathering.
Could we not do it down here?
That is a good point. Yeah, it just seems like if they had found something, chances are people would be talking. Maybe they're not talking about it around him. You know, maybe they're that disciplined. They don't seem like they would be disciplined enough to not say something around him, but maybe they are. He has been wearing this new cloak that he's gotten from Mance, but he's kept his black cloak hidden under his saddle. And I just wondered, is that a wise choice?
I gotta think that in the winter north of the wall, you keep every blanket you can. You keep every cloak. You don't throw them away just because they're black, you know. It's now...
Well, that's a good point. Mance still wears his black cloak. It just has the red slashes of silk.
I wonder if he might be politic giving it to someone else, though. You know, like giving it to Yigrette or something, so that it's not found hidden in his possession, because that would look bad.
Right, that's the thing. You could argue it means nothing, just an extra blanket. But it also, especially if anyone has lingering doubts, which we learn later in the chapter, that there's plenty of lingering doubts. You know, you hanging on to your black cloak underneath your saddle, it's not a great look.
And on the subject of lingering doubts, the one thing you want to do to dispel lingering doubts is to not be shifty and pathetically lying about the merest things.
Yes, he's certainly not a seasoned spy.
No, indeed.
Just the number of nights' watch at the Fist of the First Men.
Right. Which of course, he already baked this lie in the last chapter. He baked this lie in because he said there were just 5 of them.
Right.
We just came arranging into the Frostfangs for the heck of it. No, nobody. down there where you see those fires burning. No, nobody.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Just a picnic lunch is all. We brought a picnic lunch into the Frostfangs. He really has, was struggling over breaking his vow with Yigrette, struggling over answering how many people were at the Fist of the First Men. Once it was obvious they were standing amongst where clearly there had been a large amount of people. And who led, you can understand a little bit the who led this ranging, because it reveals that Castle Black is basically leaderless, but at this point...
I had visions of Jon sort of like when asked directly how many were on the Fist of the First Men. Well, how many do you think were on the...
What number are you thinking? We're jumping ahead a little bit, but this is making me think of this. Mance guesses several people, one of which is Jeremy Riker, having led. He could have gone with Jeremy Riker because Jeremy died by the hand of the White at Castle Black, so he really couldn't have been proven wrong unless they caught up to him.
Right, that's a good point, yeah.
So he could have been like, yes, Riker, that's who it is, Jeremy Riker.
I have a big performance meeting with my boss tomorrow. He's given me a sort of set of questions in advance of it, and one of them is, how do you think you're doing this year? And I've got notes that says, how do you think I'm doing this year?
You start.
I don't want to say A+ until I've heard what you think. But I think we both know
we'll
that.
Say it at the same time. Count of 3. I thought it was 3 and then say it. But so Jon, he's met some more nefarious wildlings that personify. You know, we've talked about why are the Night's Watch trying so hard to keep these wildlings north of the wall? You know, they're humans. Let them in. Well, he meets a few that he thinks, oh, I don't want these guys anywhere near Winterfell.
So Jon's going to set himself up as like a customs guard on the gate to Castle Black. You in the walrus bone chariot? No.
Right? Yes. You there, Ice River clan, who eat human flesh. You're out. Sorry, you've been rejected.
You murder a dog every 2 weeks. Can you make it every 2 months?
Can you work with me here a little bit? Yeah, he mentions the Ice River clan. They're basically cannibals. He mentions the cave dwellers. I mean, they paint their faces blue, purple, and green. I mean, I think you could live with that.
Yeah.
And Hornfoot men are basically people that don't wear shoes. They run around with feet as tough as leather. I mean, that's all right.
Yeah.
If you could run around with bare feet north of the wall, you'll think you're walking on plush carpet when you get south of the wall.
Quite in that shallow snow.
Right. But so he mentions several of the individuals, like you just mentioned, Harma Dogshead, who he doesn't want particularly anywhere south of the wall.
He wants to set her up with Chet.
That would be an interesting pairing. He mentions all the people we've already heard: Styr, Magnar of Then. But one new character that we get is Varamir Sixskins. And Varamir comes with an entourage of pretty badass animals. He rides his steed. And he mentions that Varamir is a small mouse of a man. Yet he rides a 13-foot snow bear.
Honestly, if you're going to climb on the back of a 13-foot polar bear, it's probably better to be small. Because you don't want him to notice, would be my guess.
As long as he doesn't notice, you're safe.
He doesn't actually ever go anywhere except where the polar bear wants to go.
Yes, right. But he has to trump Jon. Jon has his wolf. Varamir has 3 wolves and a shadow cat. So,
you know, I'm not big on pets, but that is a pretty good entourage of animals there. I gotta hand it to him.
Yeah, if you're gonna roll with some animals, you can't really go wrong there, can you? Unless you got a dragon. But certainly, it sounds like he is a warg.
Yeah.
You would think, at least with that snow bear,
one would hope.
Better be warging that thing.
So we do get an idea a little bit about how Mance has brought this army together. You know, there's different clans, different languages, different customs. And basically, the word is that he sweet-talked some, he won some over with his singing, and some of them he had to fight them into submission. So, you know, it's been quite the process of building this, for once, unified wildling army.
Yeah, and you'd have to imagine, hearing all that Mance is quite the person. Yeah. He's clearly very well-rounded, very skilled at a lot of important things. I know Corran had a lot of respect for him when he was talking to Jon about him. He said he was the best of us, referring to when he was a brother of the Night's Watch.
I mean, all of this makes Jon sort of like redouble his commitment to protect south of the wall, because everything that he cares and loves is at Winterfell. You know, he lists out Bran and Rickon, but also Maester Luwin, Old Nan, Farland, Mickon. Of course, he doesn't know that a lot of this has gone south already, but, you know, it's understandable why he would want to protect these. The question he's got to ask himself is, you see, for me, that should be his sort of like his fixed point here. He wants to protect those people. What's the best way to protect those people? It's sleeping with Yigrette. Do it. You know, if that protects those people, do it.
Yes. Yep. And Corin told him, whatever you got to do. Don't worry about your vows right now. You've got to do what you've got to do. So
I mean, you can try to not enjoy it if you want, Jon. You know. So when they reach the Fist of the First Men, Jon expects them to be attacked. You know, he assumes that Thorin Smallwood, Jarman Bookwell, etc., would be doing exactly what we've talked about, harrying this huge wildling army from the sides, because they got enough intel to make a plan. But nothing happens.
And he's right to some extent. Thorin Smallwood did report back. He did tell Mormont what this host was and where it was and how slowly it was moving. He's not exactly right about Jarman Buckwell and company. They were sent to scout the giant stair. We haven't heard from them. Hopefully, for their sake, they didn't return during the White attack. If they were, hopefully they stayed far enough away to avoid any issues there.
Well, the 3 horn blasts came before the 1 horn blast, so he also thinks, and this is an area I want to discuss actually, that 300 men can't kill 100 times that many, so you know that's your 30,000 there. But there's no need. If they could take out Mance, the rest falls apart. I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure that's 100% true, because I think Mance was necessary in bringing this together, but he isn't definitely a necessity in keeping it together, because he's convinced these people. He's convinced them of something, and now they don't need convincing anymore. Now, so I actually think they might be wrong. I think Jon might be wrong to be thinking of assassination, because I just don't think it will help. I think it's first of all, it's absolute suicide, and second of all, I think this army is now hell-bent on what it's hell-bent on, whatever that might be.
Yeah, right, yeah. And you would think in the midst of battle, if Mance were to fall, the rest of the army wouldn't be like, oh, now we're all going to fight each other.
Right. You know,
they've got a common enemy in the Rangers of the Night's Watch. They're going to stay the fight, stay and see the fight through. It's possible they could break apart. They could start squabbling before they figure out, maybe they get to the wall and they can't agree on how to get around, over, or under the wall, and they end up, breaking apart. But for the purpose of the 300 men that will be riding into this battle, I agree with you. I don't know that killing Mance just stops everybody in their tracks.
So at this point, the eagle attacks Jon entirely unprovoked. But it's not entirely unprovoked, of course, because this eagle was the warg partner of Orell, who Jon killed when he captured Yigrette. And so this eagle has had its beady eye on Jon ever since, and takes the opportunity to scratch his face. And he almost takes his eye out, yeah?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is... we may have slightly spoiled this, but it has been hinted pretty heavily that this eagle was the warg partner to the man that Jon killed when he took Yigrette hostage, like you said. And it also explains why this eagle was flying around, following them so relentlessly when they were trying to escape this wildling group that was chasing them. Because it has some of the man's spirit in it, so that it can stay focused on the task at hand, trying to get revenge on Jon.
But I don't know even if you need Orell's spirit. I mean, I think the eagle might just want revenge, Just
as an eagle wanting revenge for the death of his warg partner.
Right.
Yes.
Not that Orell is in any way pulling the strings anymore. Just the eagle is like,
okay,
I miss my buddy. I'm going to get the guy who killed him.
I think Jon and Yigrette both think that there is some of Orell's spirit still inside of it, but you're right. Yeah, it could just be an angry bird.
I see what you did there. That's very good. But Tormund and Yigrette go to bat for Jon. They defend him from the eagle. And then Tormund threatens Rattleshirt, who's come on the scene. As if Rattleshirt and the eagle were in cahoots, in fact.
I thought that same thing, yeah, because the eagle went and flew back onto Rattleshirt's helmet, his giant skull helmet. Yeah.
Rattleshirt is there to take Jon back to Mance, but in the meantime, he sent the eagle on ahead to tear his face apart. But Tormund tells Rattleshirt that the next time he comes, he better come with a sword in his hand, because that's where he'll find Tormund's, which is that's pretty good.
You know, they've really, Tormund and Yigrette especially, and it seems like Longspear Rick, he doesn't get it, but a mention. I think he gets one mention in this chapter. He also went from Rattleshirt's group to Tormund's group with Jon and Yigrette. But they've really embraced Jon, and that says something about a person that they. I mean, I guess you can understand why Yigrette did. One, he saved her life by not killing her as he was commanded to do, and she fancies him a good bit. But Tormund's he's very open-minded, totally accepting this guy. So it seems.
But is it what it actually tells you about these people is that they're gullible and unable to judge obviously crooked.
Okay. That's another way to look at it.
I'm just saying, I mean, Jon is playing them, and they're not picking up on it, even though he's very bad at it.
I see what you're saying. You make some good points there, yeah. But you'd have to think at some point he might feel pretty awful if he shows them, if he reveals to them that he's been playing them false this whole time.
Good point. Jon soldiers on with the blood dripping down his face and is accompanied by Yigrette, and he goes up to the Fist of the First Men, where they find that the whole slope and the base is littered with parts of horses, which is not very pleasant, and the whole top is soaked with blood, but there are no human bodies. There's only horse remains.
So what does that tell us?
You know what? I think that we might have some more of these blue-eyed freaks chasing us later.
Does seem possible, doesn't it? Seems like many of the this great ranging has joined the ranks of the whites.
Was everybody in the great ranging mounted?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I think they counted like maybe 200 horses here. So it's possible that 100 or so got away. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's a little bit confusing, and it caused me to wonder. Something that I'll get to in a second. But so Mance says, Harma, how many horses have we found? And Harma says, more than 100, less than 2. But there are more horses to the east that are, covered in snow. We're not sure how many there are. So it could be another 100.
Right. Yes. So it could be all of them, or some of them might have escaped. That's the basic thing. Right. We're not sure. Yeah.
Yes. But boy, would this be a devastating loss for the Night's Watch, which is the risk when you take 300 of your best fighters and put them in harm's way north of that 700-foot wall that spans the continent. So, just saying.
But you mean they perhaps forsook their strategic advantage here?
Right. Yes. That's pretty much what I'm saying. But Jon sees the ravens in the ring wall, and he wonders if they're just random ravens or if they're the Night's Watch ravens. And of course, that makes him think of Sam. And of course, that makes us think of Sam. And this whole thing doesn't bode very well for Sam because he's not the most skilled warrior or rider. So, and then one other thing about that, if Sam would indeed have died here on the Fist of the First Men, could that horn be up here as well? Because Jon gave Sam the horn. If he died and then became a white, he probably didn't pick up his belongings and take it with him, So it could be around here somewhere. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying it is the horn of winter. I'm just saying it's the only other horn we've seen so far.
Yeah, so Mance wants to know the truth now about how many Night's Watch there were. Tried to speak true this time, Bastard of Winterfell. As we said, he mentioned that there were only 5 of them earlier, but now he reluctantly admits that there were 300, and they were led by Mormont, and that Bowen Marsh commands at Castle Black. All of these people are known to Mance, so now he knows that Castle Black is now led by an accountant, basically, who and becomes much easier target for Mance's army than it would have otherwise been.
Yeah, Bowen Marsh. So Bowen Marsh is the Lord Steward of Castle Black, and his nickname from Ed, Dolores Ed, is Old Pomegranate. He also guesses, like I said, Jeremy Riker, Thorin Smallwood, and Otten Withers having led this group. And I had already mentioned Jeremy Riker died from the White attack when they brought those two Whites in to Castle Black. Thorin Smallwood did want to lead this. Remember, he asked Mormont, could I lead it? And Mormont said, get out of here. I'm leading this myself. And Otten Withers, I believe Otten Withers leads the is in charge of the baggage train.
Yes.
So he is out here. So that's who all those people are that he's referring to.
Yeah. So Mance thinks that the Night's Watch have unwittingly helped the Wildling army because they've actually diverted the army of the undead. The army of the undead that might have attacked the Wildlings has now attacked the Night's Watch instead. He seems pretty blasé about this, as if it's a common everyday occurrence north of the Wall that...
He does, right.
An army of White Walkers comes to turn you all into whites.
And, it made me think about the protection that Jon feels was lacking of this, the lack of protection in this host when he thinks they haven't put up any proper defenses. And I wondered if, after reading that part, because like you said, he was thinking, why haven't we been attacked by the Whites? We should have been, at least had some run-ins with them. So maybe White Walker protection is different than your traditional defense style, and Jon just didn't recognize it when assessing the host. Maybe it's more about having a lot of torches on hand.
Right.
As opposed to having, mounted swords and arrows. Instead, it's about how many torches can you get your hands on?
Point.
Things like that Jon wouldn't have picked up on.
Yeah. So all of this still leads lingering questions about Jon's defection. He has clearly lied several times to them. Yigrette basically bails him out by saying that they're having sex, and if they're having sex, then he clearly has lapsed as a brother of the Night's Watch. That's good of her. It's good of her because he was in trouble at that moment, and that really did sort of reassure everyone a little bit.
Right, it was quick thinking. But, I was thinking after the discussion with Tormund about how casually wildlings take having bastards and taking moon tea for unwanted pregnancies, I was a little bit surprised at how well this revelation, false though it was, worked.
Yeah, the thing is, it wouldn't have worked for a wildling. It works because he's a brother of the Night's Watch. They feel like that's the...
Sure. It's one more tether removed. But, we also, and Mance would know, that the only thing more frequented than the brothel in Moletown is our haberdashery.
I don't think that's true. I mean, remember, we only sell to deserters. There are not that many of them.
So we're in the wrong business is what you're telling us.
We're like the vacuum cleaner salesman in Breaking Bad,
Yeah. So, it's my point is it's not that uncommon for Brothers of the Night's Watch to break that particular vow.
True. So Mance isn't completely convinced, so he sends Jon and Yigrette with Styr and Jarl to go over the wall to prove their faith is more than just words. Mance's demeanour towards Jon has definitely changed. He's definitely hostile, curt and cold. I'm not sure that that's the job that I would have given Jon if I was not trusting.
Right. We're going to send you home.
Send you home, exactly.
You want to know how we're going to punish you? We're going to test you by sending you home.
But, I mean, his knowledge of the wall could be helpful, so it's not completely crazy, but...
Right. Yeah. And Styr is he was the earless one that Jon confused for Mance when he first came into the tent. He's the Magnar of Then. And Jarl, I'm not sure. He was introduced. He was also in that tent. He was introduced as Val's pet.
Oh, yeah.
Val being the sister of Dalla, who is Mance's pregnant queen, for lack of a better term there.
So Mance believes that Mormont's escaped and is heading for the wall. I mean, it's just a guess, really. I mean, they could have all been killed. But again, just a horse head count, it does feel like some might have escaped. So
I guess maybe Mance is just worst case scenario, Mormont survived. because Yigrette sure thought he was dead. When Jon was struggling about what to answer, who led this host, she said, "Just tell him he's dead anyway." So she thought he was dead.
And Mance literally says, if we can reach the wall before him, we've won. We've always worried about this, and it's come to pass. If you send the lion's share of your fighters north of the wall and you lose, then the wall is very much unprotected, and it should not be too hard for these guys, magical or not, to broach the wall one way or the other.
Yeah, if they have no one impeding them, they can eventually get across the wall. That's the point of the Night's Watch, is to man the wall, not man north of the wall. Ghost does show up here at the end, and Jon wanted Ghost after the eagle mauling. He was tracking down his horse, but he thought, what I really want is Ghost, and then he thought Ghost could be leagues away, which might explain why he showed up when he did, because possibly Ghost felt the danger that Jon was in and began his return to defend or help Jon and got here just now.
Good point. Good point.
And you know what he gets for his efforts of coming back to help Jon is he gets to sleep alone in the cold, because Yigrette says, "Tell Ghost to find somewhere else to sleep tonight."
Do you have some background for us?
I do. We know that giants and children of the forest were the first inhabitants of Westeros. They coexisted fairly peacefully until the arrival of the first men across the arm of Dorne that once connected Westeros to Essos. Once upon a time, giants lived across Westeros from at least as far south as Massey's Hook and the Red Mountains north of Dorne. Some maesters believe that giants once lived in caves beneath Casterly Rock, in fact. According to legend, they were hunted and driven out of much of Westeros by first men. However, would it surprise you to learn that Westeros isn't the only place it's believed giants once lived?
Go on!
There's evidence that giants also call parts of Essos home. Bones of giants have been found in caves beneath the hills of Norvos and in the Bone Mountains, for example. There was a breed of stone giants called Jagwin who once lived in the Kajazaskwa Mountains in northern Essos. I'm not sure I got that quite right. And these stone giants were believed to have been twice the size of Westerosi giants. Finally, some believe that the now extinct maze makers of Lorath were born of a union between humans and female giants due to the large bones found on the island. And Hodor. Osha thinks Hodor has some giant's blood in him as well. So,
comparison with the television show. There is less mistrust of Jon when the wildlings discover the dead horses at the Fist of the First Men, which, by the way, are arranged in a pattern. They're arranged in like a spiral.
Oh, yes, I recall this. Right, yeah.
Mance says something kind of interesting. He says something along the lines of, "Always the artists," or something like that. There's the line he says. And Oral, who is the eagle's warg, or the other half of the eagle-warg pairing, is still alive and is played by Mackenzie Crook, who you might know from the British Office. He played the Dwight Schrute character in the British Office.
Yes, right.
Oral's still alive, and he actually takes some of Rattleshirt's role from the book in the TV show. He does not trust Jon Snow one little bit, even though he hasn't yet been killed by him. That may yet come. There's lots of posturing and territorial marking between the two of them. Yigrette definitely likes Jon. And I don't know if this happens in the book in the future, but he breaks his vows, let me tell you.
Oh, he breaks his vow.
So, Pedantry Corner, you've got something good.
I've got the word snowflakes written down because I'm going to call BS on Tormund, not for the fact that he confused a bear for a woman.
Definitely happened.
Yeah, that could. Not the fact that he then fathered human bear.
Documentary evidence.
Yeah. I'm going to call BS on him for the mention of the large snowflakes. He says that it was a winter where he got the husband of bears title was a winter colder than the previous winter, which was so cold he had to cut open a giant and live out several months inside the giant. He said it was an extremely cold winter, and that there weren't just little snowflakes like you see right now, that there were snowflakes as large as a man's head. And I thought, I don't think that's how snowflakes work, based on having grown up in western Pennsylvania, where we get a decent amount of snow.
Just interjection before you carry on. Western Pennsylvania is not north of the wall, but do continue.
It's not. But we do get some snow up that way. According to weather.com, large flakes occur when the temps are near freezing, closer to freezing. The reason is the flakes melt slightly, allowing flakes to stick together to create larger flakes. Flakes as large as dinner plates have been recorded.
Wow.
So he could be right about large flakes, but the temperature gets, the further below freezing the temperature gets, the smaller the flakes get, because they're very dry, powdery, and don't stick together well.
Not the first snow pedantry we've had, but bravo. It's excellent. Very good.
I just thought, first I thought that would be crazy to see a snowflake as large as someone's head. And then I was like, but wait, don't snowflakes, when it's colder, they're powdery. You can't make a good snowman or snowball.
There you go.
I did a little digging.
You know what we need? We need more words for snow. We don't have enough words.
Right, yeah, just one word. Yeah.
I wonder what the word for a snowflake the size of a dinner plate is. That one needs a word.
It does. I agree.
News and notes. As you might have noticed, in fact I noticed today, I was listening to an episode and I heard this for the first time. We now have ads in our episodes. And we thank our sponsors. If you prefer the ad-free version, consider becoming a Buy Me a Coffee sustainer. Those people will never get to hear those ads. They won't even know they exist because we send them an ad-free version. So there you go. The choice is yours.
That's right. And, these ads are being added through an algorithm. So if you come across one that is at a particularly weird spot for an ad, shoot us an email and I can go in and move it. But we're on episode 159. I cannot go through every location that they want to put an ad in and verify it. So I apologize if there's one in a particularly weird spot. Just let me know and I'll see if I can address that. In other news, this week that our lovely listeners are listening to this episode is our 3rd year anniversary.
Ooh, look at us.
October 7th, 2022.
Look at us. We're like a toddler, kind of like barely needs a diaper anymore. Mostly toilet trained.
Yes, we are. Yeah. We're definitely growing up, huh? We've been doing this. I can't even believe we made it a year, let alone 3 years. I mean, I have had people tell me I'm about the most tenacious person that they have ever met. I really don't like to give up on things.
I wondered why we hadn't given up. It's you.
It's my fault.
I'm the opposite. I'm lazy. No, yeah. Congrats. That's awesome. We've done well.
Yes, congrats to you. Okay, we're patting ourselves on the back here.
Oh, but by the way, actually, just on the patting yourselves on the back, I was on a work call yesterday, and it was like really celebratory about this thing that we'd done. And honestly, it was kind of like, how we're on one side of the company and then marketing is on another side of the company. It was a marketing call, and I was working on the thing that they were celebrating, and it totally wasn't working, and it was a complete mess. Meanwhile, This call I'm listening to is just all self-congratulation and backslapping. And eventually, they muted me because they could hear my rage typing. I was like,
I'm trying to make this work. That sounds about exactly how it goes between sales and R&D. Well, so for our 3-year anniversary, what we're going to do is a YouTube Live. We've never done it before. Hopefully it goes well. We'll announce the date. We haven't hammered out a date just yet, but it will be either this week or the following week. And basically, we don't necessarily have an agenda. You guys come on and we'll talk. You guys send us stuff you want to talk about or whatever.
I'll try and catch up on House of the Dragons so that we can talk about that, but I'm still way behind. I've tried to watch the third episode like 4 times and I just can't get through it. I'm so tired all the time. I'm like, oh, forget it.
Yeah, I'm now down to watching it solo. Stacey gave up last week.
It's a miracle she went that long, honestly.
It wasn't easy. I had to do a lot of... Did you see what just happened? Do you understand what... Would you put your phone down for 1 second? Do you even know who these people are or what they're talking about? I'm going to have to make a podcast for this show for you.
I tried to convince Carson. I said, it is kind of soapy. It is kind of like, sort of like, who'll get the throne? She's like, is it as complicated? I was like, it's a narrower story. You might like it.
Much narrower. Yes, right. Anyway, so... 3-year anniversary. Congratulations to us. And we're gonna do a YouTube Live for the first time.
Let's draw a conclusion here. So, it was an interesting look at Wildling life. I highly recommend reading the chapter if you haven't. You get to read about mammoths and giants and walrus bone chariots and things like that.
Yeah. We got some cool descriptions of, varying unique clans and individuals and customs and things like that. So it definitely expanded the world a bit.
And bravo to Mance for bringing them all together because they have nothing in common, these people, clearly. I mean, he said, they don't even have language in common, many of them. So
must have been quite the effort to cobble all these people.
Yes, comparable perhaps to Egon the Conqueror. If you think about it,
sure.
I mean, it's not as big. It's not as big as the Seven Kingdoms, but it's as diverse, perhaps, and also,
and Mance
doesn't have dragons. Exactly. Tormund seems a true ally to Jon, but hey, you know what would be really smart of Mance is to get the friendliest guy in the Wildling army to befriend Jon and be really nice to him, just so you can keep a careful eye on him through his eyes.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah. Maybe Tormund is a significantly better spy than Jon is.
He is. No matter what's happening, he is. Because Jon is the world's worst.
Can't be worse.
Spy. He sleeps on a black blanket. Refuses to give it up.
He sleeps on his new new cloak. He puts the black one over top of him.
He won't even sleep with Yigrette. God.
And there is a large giant force. Not large giant. That's not the description of the size of the forest. There is a large force of giants riding with this host. And I just wonder, did Thorin Smallwood notice them when he was reporting back to Mormont? Because you'd think they would need to factor that into the calculations of whether or not to ride on them.
Yeah. So Jon's struggling. I mean, we're teasing him for not being very good at spying, but obviously it's difficult for him. He's honor-driven, and he's taken a vow, and he has to break all kinds of facets of the vow in order to fulfill it.
Yes. Yeah, and he's really struggling with that, which is understandable. He was raised by Ned Stark, who put not breaking vows pretty high on his list, except for possibly one exception. One very notable exception to Jon. And Jon will have he's got a lot of work to do to repair the damage being caught in that lie. The initial lie saying that it was just him and 4 friends having a picnic lunch in the Frostfangs.
Yeah, it was a bad lie to start with, really. I mean, we're the vanguard of the Night's Watch who are on the Fist of the First Men. Much better lie, because it was the truth. Just start with that. Just be a traitor. Right.
I get why he did it, I mean, especially a young man being a spy for the first time. He didn't want to blow Mormont's cover and, protect his brothers. And certainly he never expected the wildling host to actually reach the Fist of the First Men without being attacked by the Night's Watch.
Right, but then all the more reason to just tell them that's where they are. You should march on them in all force, strung out as long and thin as possible.
Right.
So, but it does not look good for the Night's Watch ranging. I mean, the dead horses everywhere, the pink snow.
No.
The no bodies, well, there's a very simple explanation for why there's no bodies. It's not because they all ran away without their horses, it's because they were all killed and now will fight for the other side.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, I don't think this was the risk that Mormont was thinking would be a risk, but it was a risk when they decided to make camp at the Fist of the First Men, being that there was really only one way in and out, and that's up the southern side of the mountain, hill, whatever you want to call it. So, that might very well played into the Whites' ability to attack them so effectively, because they could just keep coming up that hill, and the Night's Watch don't have a lot of other places they can go.
And every time you lose one, they gain one.
Twofold.
Yep. And the wildlings now are headed for the wall, seemingly unhindered by the ranging, which appears to have been decimated.
And we're heading to a little warmer climate next week. We'll be heading to King's Landing. We've got a Sansa chapter coming up.
Well, there's 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review. They're always the way that we bring in more listeners. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or you can buy us an Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level, where you get an ad-free version of the show.
And as always, of course, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can go out and follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube, and those would be especially important, our social medias. Right now, to find out what we're going to do and when we're going to do our 3-year anniversary.
I will pay attention to them. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.